Hello viewers, SuperOMS here. Today, we're delving into Gran Turismo 7's update 1.29, more specifically, the 4 time-limited races where we of the unwashed masses are finally being given a chance to race against the long-awaited Sophy AI. Sophy is a neural network-trained AI that Polyphony Digital have had in development for quite some time, even before the release of Gran Turismo 7, and it appears to finally be ready for public display. For those of us familiar with the absolute abomination which is Gran Turismo 7's current AI, this is very welcome news. Sophy AI learns dynamically by being trained on a given racetrack and when racing against human opponents. In its internal alpha versions, it easily beat the fastest esports racers in the world, so it's safe to say I'm more than a little nervous. I'm super curious to experience how it races, and I'm sure you are as well. So let's give it a shot. We'll be going over a highlight reel from these 4 races as I attempt to coax out the best and worst from Sophy to see whether this truly is the ChatGPT equivalent of racing game AI. As with all great things, we begin in the main menu, working our way up towards the Race Together event, which is our GT7 Sophy demo. Sarah is nice enough to give us an intro primer. The TLDR is that there are 4 different races, ranging from the Scuba Circuit through to Alsace, Trial Mountain Circuit, and then finally concluding in GR4 cars in Suzuka, which is really going to be the flagship event, so I will look forward to working our way up there. For the time being, there's essentially 4 different difficulty levels, beginning with beginner, going through to intermediate, expert, and then finally ending in the one-on-one superhuman Sophy mode, which essentially destroys every human on Earth. So we'll be beginning with the Scuba Circuit for the time being, and testing out the range of AI from beginner through to intermediate, expert, all the way through to one-on-one. And as you can see, the lower the difficulty, the more OP our car. So I look forward to trying this out, and we're beginning on beginner mode, of course, because that's just how I roll. And let's see what Sophy has for the newer members of our community. I'm excited. Here we go. First time in Scuba, we're approaching the Sophy Verte, and thus the emoticon fest begins. A range of emotions on display already, somewhat bemused, maybe a little bit shocked that I'm overtaking green so soon in the race. Okay, so far so good. We have an extremely OP car in this race. Sophy Rouge there in a bit of shock as it closes the door on me, coming up under the Dunlop tyre there. Not very happy it seems, doesn't like being shadowed. So we do the switchback on the outside, hard on the brakes, and of course we are way too OP. So we blast out onto the back straight now, just behind first place. And this will be Sophy Blue. Now this is the first time it's going to do something very interesting. Pay attention. As it drifts towards the center, it cuts me off. It takes a shallow line into the turn on purpose in order to close the door on me. Now that is a Verstappen-esque move. Check it out again. Absolute pro tier stuff. It just casually drifts across like, I didn't see you there, guy. Don't worry about that. Yeah, it's fine. It's all good. Not that it's going to help him very much as we make the pass. And of course, being beginner mode, this goes back into the standard Gran Turismo 7 single player mode, which is essentially hot lapping by oneself. So we'll fast forward to the very end of this race as we take a very convenient and very easy first place. So 12 seconds ahead of second, and I'm very ready to move on to intermediate mode and see what Sophy actually has in store for us. We of course manage a clean race bonus for one of the first times in Gran Turismo history because the AI was not as murderous as it normally is. So here we are now moving on to the intermediate mode. So our car has been somewhat detuned. Let's see what, if any, effect that has on us in this race. Coming up on Sophy Verte again. Already in shock at my stellar understeer, so apparently our brakes are not what they once were. We come up to the hairpin here, getting on the brakes, what I thought was nice and early, but turned out not to be quite so much, so the car has definitely been detuned quite heavily as Verte takes the lead, very smug, very glib and happy with itself, but not for too long. So, a very large gamut of emotions being experienced by this AI, which is kind of ironic given that it doesn't really feel any of them at all. Kind of strange to code your AI to be somewhat bipolar, but hey. it's a very interesting way to denote the cars around us. So I'm noticing they're not holding the line as rigidly as AI normally would. They do swerve around. As you can see, Sophy Blue just going really out wide, maximizing that line, maximizing that apex, and that exit out of the corner as well. But of course, no match to my amazing Dory line, using the entire track, not minding any track limits. I hope that would make 90s Dory proud. So Sophy Blue, not very happy with us currently, as we make the overtake around the outside. Very conveniently, it's almost as if we have a couple hundred more horsepower. So that is intermediate mode. Slightly more of a challenge, but not something that's entirely impressive. As I do the shift of my life, you can tell that I'm using a manual H shifter to really get immersed in this experience. I would not recommend it for absolute lap times, but certainly it does make the experience a little bit more lifelike. So now we jump towards the final lap, looking behind us to see if anyone is caught up. You can see Sophy Violet is actually 5.5 seconds behind, so it's closed the gap by about half since the beginner difficulty. So it is cranking itself up, and Violet is really the one that we have to watch out for here as we cross the finish line for first place here in intermediate mode. And here we have another lovely clean race bonus, courtesy of the AI actually being mindful of our existence on the track, something very new to anybody who's used to racing Gran Turismo 7 stock AI. So here we are in expert mode. This should be the highest, most difficult, yet still achievable mode in the game. The car has been properly detuned now, as you can tell by me just not having any grip whatsoever. Great understeer on the corner exit too, as we approach Sophy Verte. Again, it seems to be in perpetual shock for some reason, now switching it up with some anger, and not all that thrilled that I've already caught up to it. So we're going to take the inside here at the Dunlop tyre, nice and easy, as we push on ahead, third place already. Gradually getting my head around this slowly weakening vehicle of ours. So we have Sophy Rouge going really far out wide there, half blocking the inside. It was sort of half committed. I like these moves that it makes that seem, it's almost like it's unsure of itself. It's like it's not sure whether it should commit, whether it should close the door, whether it should leave it open. About as committed as I am to these shifts. As we brake again for T1, approaching Blue one more time. It's certainly taking us a little bit longer to overtake everybody. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's probably not going to be too much of a hassle for us to catch Blue here, but let's see. Keeping it nice and tight on the inside here. Use the entire track. And use the entire gearbox as well. Doing the shifts of my life here. So Blue not particularly thrilled with us as it partially closes the door there, forces me off the track. Fortunately, that line wasn't quite as abominable as my shifting is, so we get out onto the back straight and it has no hope, unfortunately. We still have the horsepower advantage as we take the lead midway through lap 2. So one thing I'm trying to do is I'm swerving around there trying to see if it actually stays in my toe, and yes, I believe it does. So the AI for the first time ever will actually try and stay in the slipstream, try and maximize its own chances rather than just kind of sticking to that one rail line that the Gran Turismo 7 AI is so renowned for. As you can see here on the final lap now, we have Sophy Violet really rapidly catching up. It's within 2 seconds. So really closing the gap. Obviously I'm in a far slower car, but it appears to be really cranking it up. So I'd be curious to see if there's one level higher than this. That seems like it would be the right amount of challenge for myself. As we finish across the line in expert mode here at Scuba, first place. What do you think of Sophy so far? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below and stay tuned for the ultimate Suzuka race coming up. So here is essentially the moment of truth, the 1v1. We are both in the exact same car, exact same power points, and Sophy is cranked up to its superhuman setting. We appears to be a standing start. I'm scrambling to find the traction control button, and here we go, launching and then taking it off. I've heard that this is the correct way to launch. I, of course, have not had much experience doing this. Sophie immediately takes the lead. Already almost half a second in the lead. Crazy. The whole gamut of emotions being experienced by Sophie there as it takes the lead. First corner, it's already half a second ahead at Scuba. Absolutely insane. So I have no idea where it's finding this extra time, but it's so composed out of the corner exits. Its lines are so nice and clean, as it just uses as much of the track as it needs and not an inch more. And me, not quite so much, but you have to admit, I have a lot more flair in my driving, if not lap time. So coming up on the back straight, we're already a second and a half behind, and that is on a 1 minute lap time, slightly longer than 1 minute lap time. Absolutely crazy. So I'm starting to see that this is going to be a handful. I don't think these one-on-ones are going to be very achievable for people of my low proficiency level. In fact, if anything, this actually reminds me of practicing with James Baldwin when we were training for the Sim Racing GP inaugural Silverstone race, where essentially whenever I thought I did a turn almost perfectly, he'd be essentially gaining a 10th, 2 tenths, 3 tenths. So Sophie actually does a really great job of encapsulating that soul-crushing, deep feeling that you get from racing against esports aliens. So, good job, Cass. As we get close to the back straight one more time, blissfully, my misery will soon be over. So I would say, in a perfect world, something between the expert difficulty and what they're using here with this insane demigod difficulty on one-on-one mode would be perfect for general racing. The expert mode felt a little bit too easy, I guess, for want of a better descriptor. It's still that whole start at the end of the field and emerge first. I'd love to do some more door-to-door racing with Sophie, so let's see if we get more of that as we work our way through the races and they get progressively more difficult, or at least I hope they get progressively more difficult. So, we've gone through the gamut. We now know how it performs in beginner, intermediate, expert, and one-on-one, so we're jumping ahead to Alsace. I now want to show you some new tricks that the AI has picked up other than being in perpetual shock that I'm catching up. So here we go, braking hard. You can really see that the AI is having to wrangle the car now. It doesn't feel like they're on a completely different physics model to the player anymore. Giving the Celica as much room as it wants, treating it like a human. Now watch this. Nice little love tap on the apex. And you can see the car actually skids out wide, so you can actually dislodge your opponents. You can actually get the elbows out, nudge them along, and check this out. On the subsequent lap, they found a new line as they half drift through this high-speed corner here. So I've not seen the AI light up the tires like this before, but it seems like they've dropped a gear. They've just dumped all the torque to the wheels and they're just lighting it up all the way through the corner, which can sometimes help when you're driving road cars. Now we get something else. I leave some room on the inside and the AI comes and unfortunately bangs me like I'm not there. So a little bit more situational awareness certainly would not go astray. Side by side, across the line, and as is always the case in Gran Turismo, once you pass first, it's basically just a time trial with yourself until the very end, so we won't waste any time with that. So jumping straight on ahead to Trial Mountain now, right behind the BMW Rouge, the Petuline shock at us, of course. Now check this out, this is something very, very new. Once again, hitting the rear quarter panel of the car as it just skids out. So this is giving me the indication that we might have some really nice door-to-door elbows out racing if Sophie's dialed in correctly for the campaign, or the career mode. So once again, actually letting it do what it wants to do. You can see it drifting this corner one more time to try and get all the pace that it wants. So it's definitely picked up some new tricks in the guise of Sophie versus the standard, very boring on-rails AI that Gran Turismo 7 ships with. As we can see here, I'm approaching first, braking nice and hard, it cuts me off on the inside again, decides to close the door. I managed to get the switchback, but not the grip. As you can see from the outside again, the Corvette really just spinning up the rear tires very, very easily here. But really not much else to show here at Trial Mountain, just standard fare, same old, but on a different track. And now, the big one-on-one, Corvette versus Corvette, mano a mano. How humiliated will I be once again? So, starting as well as I possibly can, not dropping back as much as I did at Scuba, so maybe I'm learning something, I don't know. You can see Sophy just moving out wide to maximize its line. It is so perfect in its utilization of grip, just perfectly half drifting its way through the corner, the way that the Corvette wants to drive. Leaving me behind pitifully by 2 seconds already, so we're jumping ahead right to the end because there's really not much to see. It just destroys me as I get close to crossing the line with about a 18-second gap over 2 laps here at Trial Mountain. So certainly nothing to write home about for myself, but the gap in skill between expert and one-on-one mode is definitely nothing to be jeered at. And now we move on from Trial Mountain to our ultimate race at Suzuka in the GR4 cars. I've been looking forward to this the entire trip. I am curious to see what Sophy can do. When we're in a race car, I no longer have to H-pattern shift with my manual shifter, should spare some time. So I look forward to some very close neck-and-neck racing, especially here on the famous Suzuka curves. Coming up on Sophie Rouge now, we're going to see something very interesting take place here. As I overtake around the inside, or rather outside of this corner, coming up on the inside, Sophy just decides to belt me out of the way, much as the stock AI often does, so definitely some work needed on the situational awareness, I think. And here we go one more time in a subsequent take. Same corner, same everything. And bang, again, just across as if I'm not even there. So it definitely has its spots. It's better in some corners than others. Might just need a little bit more training against human players. So with that done, we now move on to expert mode. And expert mode is where we're going to showcase the majority of the race, because this is what we've all been waiting for. This is the basically penultimate race of the We Race Together mode. So I look forward to this in my Huracan GR4, finally matched relatively evenly to the rest of the field. Just a little bit more OP as I shift the brake balance to the rear slightly, giving me a bit more of an oversteer balance through these corners, coming up into the mighty Suzuka curves. The AI very uniform in its expression of emotions. Green here is not all too happy to be trailed. So far so good, we're managing to keep up. Nothing quite as insane as the one-on-one mode quite yet. As we slowly just shuffle onto the inside, no door being closed by green over there. Down to third, cut across. Not too bad an exit, and now we're approaching first and second already. And this is lap 1 out of 3, so this is going to be a reasonably long race here, and especially if I manage to overtake first and second on the first lap, it might make things a tiny bit more boring than expected. So I will say that in spite of everything that Sophy brings to the table, the new lines, the unsuredness when it comes to defending, it's still very much the horrible driving that you know and love from me, but it's still very much the experience of starting at the rear of the field and then very easily working your way to the front of the field that you kind of know and love from Gran Turismo 7. So wow, as it just moves across and belts me as if I'm not even there. So certainly the Audi, not my biggest fan, but it's safe to say that Sophy could use a bit of extra awareness training here at Suzuka. You brake nice and hard for the chicane. Over the curbs. what I love about the GR4s. Nice soft suspension as we come up on Sophy Blue, the McLaren 570 or 650S. Blocking the inside, very impressive as it shifts across, trying to squeeze me out. 650S, there we go. As I just make an absolute massive T1 there, so Blue takes the lead from me. Let's follow it up the curves and see how we go. Just take the inside, it, okay, closes the door, I like it, very fair, very fair. I certainly shouldn't have shoved my nose up the inside there, but you know, you've got to probe, you've got to test. Yeah, it's just cutting off the inside, grabbing the curb. When you're trailing the AI, I get the impression that it's a bit more mindful of your presence than the stock AI is. It's constantly wondering about whether it should be cutting you off, whether it should be going on the inside. It's actually thinking about how to position itself in relation to you. Now, you can see that Sophy Violet, towards the end of lap 2, has actually begun catching me, which is a little bit worrying. After drafting me for a while, it's decided to move to the outside to try and get a run, but no such luck. It just doesn't quite have the horsepower as I completely make a mess of 130R. Coming up into the chicane. Now this is Violet's opportunity to take the lead, and it does a very, very good job, even as I bump it twice like an absolute amateur. Absolute public lobby stuff going on there, but very, very impressed at its overtake. And it's rightfully quite angry at me as it squeezes me out wide. But unfortunately does not have the horsepower to maintain the lead down the back straight. I'm going to brake, see if we make it. Yes, did not outbrake myself this time. As we get into the final lap of what should be the final race here at Suzuka, Violet very, very close to me. As we exit the Spoon corner. Once again, Violet just stuck to the rear end of my car, and you can see it following me as I try to break the draft. It's not having any of that. So can you imagine this in the Nürburgring Nordschleife in full swing? Just showing you again the drafting from the outside there. It's just totally glued to the rear end of my car. As I throw it down 130R, make an utter mess of it one more time. Not my cleanest ever work, but we've managed to maintain the lead this time. No track limit warnings, astoundingly. As we put it across the line for what should be the final time. And believe it or not, we have just won the race a couple of milliseconds, a few tenths ahead of Sophy Violet. So, what do you think of Sophy's performance here at the ultimate race at Suzuka? I think it started to race me better and better and better as I went along, which is very interesting to see. I don't know if it's learning dynamically or if maybe I'm adjusting to its driving style as well. But that's not all. There is one final humiliation left to be seen. I have got to go one-on-one against the demigod, uber superhuman version of GT Sophy here in the Porsche Club Sport GT4. Here we go, launching, scrambling for TC, actually getting a great launch as it just nudges straight into me from the get-go. It seems to just assume that I won't actually be there. So T1, I managed to keep the inside. It's coming around it's just lost it. I've just tapped it on the rear quarter panel because it's coming on me and it's lost its line. So I've managed to take the lead. Only a quarter second behind me already, even after that nudge. So I'm set for the laps of my life here. I know that this is not going to be easy. I know that I'm not quicker than this AI, so I have to just think about my positioning, treat this more as a chess match than anything else. So just launch it up the inside there, use the GR4 factor, pretend you're an off-road car, as Sophy is just glued to the arse end of my car here. I have to take the inside. There's no way. There's no way I'm going to be defensive basically the entire way through this now. So, truth be told, I was kind of expecting the humiliation to have started by now, but somehow I fluked my way into the lead of this race as I just hold the inside, just desperately hold the inside, knowing that a singular lapse is all that it will take for Sophy to just utterly crush me. Blasting our way out now. Out of spoon. Just nose to tail. I mean, there isn't even 30 centimeters between our two cars. It's literally bumper to bumper. As the tries go around the outside, but it just does not have the speed for the slingshot. 130R, a bit neater in the Porsche than it was in the Huracan. Hard braking for the chicane. We just launch it over the curbs. Don't give Sophy an inch to work with here. Now this is the dangerous part. If it uses the toe correctly, I may not be able to defend into T1 here. So holding the inside, Sophy takes the outside. I start to squeeze. I squeeze. Maximize our entry into the turn. Brake as late as I can, just skidding out wide. Just making myself as large as I can be. Going into T1 and now into the curbs. I'm not going to make this easy for the AI. It has humiliated me 3 times already. Ain't no one needs to see this again. This is the drive of my life here at Gran Turismo 7. I'm giving this absolutely everything I have to maximize the corners. Try and keep my positioning right so it can't overtake me on the inside. Just launch it up. Now launch it up over the curb one more time. There we go. Just use the entire track. And you cannot shake this AI. It is so perfect in the way that it utilizes the car. It's even trying for the switchback there, as you can see, but it just doesn't quite manage. So I'm pretty happy with myself so far. I would have expected to have been utterly crushed by now. It's not very happy with me though. The emoticons just going off there. Half defensive. God, you can see Sophy just maximizing the entire track, just getting a really great exit, but I am of course there as the ever-present roadblock. And there we go, side by side now, heading towards 130R for one last time on the final lap. Just launching it down, dropping a gear, use the entire track. And here we go, blocking off the inside, braking hard, fling it over the chicane. Are we actually going to make it? Am I actually going to win the single most difficult race in this event somehow? As Sophy gradually closes, but not quickly enough, as we somehow manage to get a victory right here at the end of all things. So with that, be sure to let me know, what do you think of Sophy? Are you as impressed as I was? I mean, yes, we had a few bumps here and there, especially here at Suzuka, but for the most part, it's exhibiting far more human-like behavior, at least not in this one-on-one superhuman state, but we're seeing it defend the inside, we're seeing it go in shallow to close the door, we're seeing it have hesitation when it comes to defending, we're seeing it have some hesitation when it comes to aggressive driving as well. There seems to be a very good base to build off, and from what we've seen here, it has to be among, if not one of the very best AIs in racing game history so far. So a few rough edges to be polished out, and once that's done, well, I can't wait to see what actually emerges out of Sophy, and can't wait to race against it in condensed Nürburgring and 24-hour races. That is just going to be pinnacle Gran Turismo. Be sure to crank that sub for more Gran Turismo 7 content. Let me know what else you want to see in the comments down below, and until the next time, I'll see you all later.